All right, this is John Schneider and Eric Faldy here with the Fargo 3D Printing Show. Today we are interviewing Adam Beane and Alexis Ettner of Beane Industries, thank you, Eric, talking about their Cx5 sculptable filament for 3D printing. So, Adam, Alexis, could you just give us a little background on what this material is, kind of the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So this is an outgrowth, sort of an offshoot of the sculpting material that I invented years ago. I started out in the toy industry and came up with a material that would streamline the whole process. For those who aren't familiar with how toys used to be made, I can give a really quick synopsis if that would be helpful for everybody. The way that it used to work was an iterative process. You would start sculpting a toy in a soft material like an oil-based clay. Then you would make a mold of it, like a cheap silicone mold. And then you would take the clay out, pour wax in, and finish the wax by hand. So the wax is a hard material, and you can get all your detail in it. That intermediate mold is pretty expensive, but it gets thrown away. You take the wax, and that's your final piece. You make a mold of that and cast it in plastic and give it to the toy company. This is how all the toys were made for, Kenner, Hasbro, Fisher-Price, McFarlane Toys, all of this stuff. I was dissatisfied with that workflow. I realized that I could make a material that would handle like soft clay in the beginning and then harden up as it cools, sort of like wax. It's not a wax, but it's like wax. It hardens up and you can do all your finish detail in that material, so you skip the whole initial process. Right as I was thinking about making that a product, like actually not just for me as a toy sculptor, but actually a product to market to other toy sculptors, I realized this is 2010 when I incorporated Beane Industries, and I was thinking then that I could make it into a 3D printing material, and it's just taken a number of years to get here. Because when you bootstrap a business, it can it can be pretty time intensive.
Yeah, we definitely understand that. Yeah, we definitely understand how that goes. Everything tends to take longer than you anticipate it's going to, and
yes,
usually take more resources than you anticipate it's going to as well. Not just the time side of things.
That's true. It's surprising.
And in the past few years too, with the huge popularity of 3D printing, we've gotten a lot more questions from people about whether or not our original sculpting materials, which are now used by sculptors all over the world, whether or not those can be used for 3D printing. So we've seen the desire for it grow, especially I don't know, starting in 2014 probably.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, so developing this for the 3D printing industry, where a lot of toy prototypes as well as other types of sculptures are now starting. People do a lot of work in ZBrush and print them right out, and the workflow there still involves a lot of cleanup. So you skip all of the cleanup work and making those multiple molds, the same thing that we did for the regular sculpting industry, where you're now bringing to the 3D printing world.
Okay, very cool. So what are some of the things about the formulation for the printing filament that are different than the standard Cx5 material? Because I've read through some of the questions on the Kickstarter campaign, and one of them is, oh, hey, can I just put this, can I chop it up, run it through my desktop extruder, make filament out of it? And I think one of your responses was, it will bring you only sadness.
That was her response. That's fantastic.
Because that's where we started with it, right? Like we have a material that already exists, that already can melt and be sculptable at low temperatures. But if you just extrude it, it doesn't have the really, really tight tolerances needed for being an extrudable material. There are a lot of considerations to make sure that it doesn't like jam in the printer. And flexible filaments are notoriously the most challenging to work with. So making a sculpting material that actually has the structural integrity to go through a printer has been our challenge.
Right, and actually, and I'll just say, to speak to that, it'll bring you sadness. We personally experienced that because I was just like, well, why don't we just extrude it and sell it in extruded form? And the soft stuff is when, as you guys know, with 3D printing, you wind up with heat creep, and as that creeps up the filament, it gets softer and softer. This stuff is intended to be incredibly temperature sensitive. So as it gets softer, it wraps itself around the around the wheel, and the hard stuff is so hard that it's like spaghetti. It just snaps, and it won't come off a reel. So we tried every possible combination of the mixture, because the materials are intended to be mixed. Like, the whole point is that you mix the hard and the soft. That was sort of the vision of the company to begin with. You mix your own medium. And we tried every iteration of the hard and the soft, and nothing worked. So we had to completely re-engineer the material from literally from scratch.
Okay. Yeah, I think that definitely answered my question. So what is the melting point of the material? If someone's going to run this filament through their printer, what temperature setting would they have for it?
Between 70 and 80 degrees centigrade. So we've been printing successfully at like 73 is sort of the sweet spot, 75 sometimes. 73 is pretty much where we've been good. It's a pretty low melt material. And so anything that can't be programmed to run that low.
And I just have to jump in here, and the caveat is that's 73 degrees centigrade, according to the MakerBot, right. Which who knows where right.
Yeah, we work a lot with the Replicator 2s, and I know when the Replicator 2 is still new, MakerBot says run your PLA at 230 degrees Celsius, which by any other sort of logic is about 20 to 40 degrees too hot for Celsius. But that, based on the placement of the thermistor and the heater cartridge, that's what it is. I mean, I think we've actually taken an outside thermocouple and put it against it's just so tricky, because if you take a thermocouple and place it anywhere else on the heater block, you're going to get a different temperature reading. So yeah, I definitely get that your mileage may vary based on which printer you're using.
What did you get? I'm so curious. Like, how off are those readings?
It's been a while since we looked at it. It was maybe 10 to 20 degrees difference based on where you actually put it. And I mean, we were using a Fluke thermocouple, so I mean, it's a pretty solid piece of temperature measuring equipment. But yeah, based on where it would go, it could change.
So I had a question based on, you said that the printing temperature is between 70 and 80 degrees centigrade. What happens if it's in the car, if it's hot? I mean, do you have to transport these in a special way so they don't melt?
Oh, look, your prints?
Yes. Or the filament itself.
Or the filament itself.
I wouldn't leave it in a hot car in the summer, because those temperatures they can reach over 115 degrees really, really quickly. It's not going to do anything if you just leave it in a warm room. People ask, like, if my studio is 90 degrees, will it melt? It really won't. It won't deform. It won't do anything, because it'll get soft at 125 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's the glass temperature or whatever? I forget the name of that, like the liquid point or whatever.
Right, yeah.
The transition, yeah.
And that's where it gets like clay feeling. So it has to be even hotter than that to be any kind of a liquid.
But the thing is,
you don't want to,
because it comes on a spool, and if it's too warm, it's going to deform, like the different layers. The different layers are going to deform and potentially either adhere to themselves.
We just got a weird echo there.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure what's going on there.
With my audio, or?
Yeah, I think it's fine now. I don't know what happened there, but.
Oh, okay. I'll just take it from where I was saying. The different layers pressing up against each other in a really hot environment could potentially either bond to each other a little bit, or even just deform enough that when it goes through that tube, as you know, like, tolerance is everything. So if the tolerance is off, if it becomes squished in one way or another, then that could potentially be a problem.
but that's one of the things too, is getting this to be hard enough and with a solid enough structure so that it doesn't deform unless it's, you know, left somewhere very inappropriate for it. It is a sculpting material.
Yeah, but
it's
still,
not plastic.
But still soft enough to be sculpted by hand with hand tools. So, and one of the things that we've discovered by accident a couple times is when you take Cx5 or Cx5S, which are the first two sculpting materials that we came up with and have been selling, and you get them to their melting point, they don't change shape, so they can look like they're They look exactly the same, but then when you grab them, you can squish them. So if it did potentially get too hot, you could just put it in a cool place and it would cool down. It wouldn't have changed shape. If it's a big thing, it might have like wilted a little bit. But it is a sculpting material. It's not like a plastic.
But we're talking about like high 90s, low 100s.
Right. Like when
no one is working in a 100-degree studio. People ask me that, and I'm like, why are you doing that to yourself? Don't do that.
How is your studio getting over 100 degrees?
I guess I have one question as far as slicing goes. How many shells would you guys usually do for something like this? Because I know if you're pulling stuff away, you don't want to end up having a hole in your model.
Right. 3 normally, and that's pretty thick. We thought that would be sort of the lower end. It turns out to be
surprisingly.
You can even sculpt on top of it with just 1 shell. But 2 and 3 gives you a lot of material to work with before you're hitting the infill. And then the handy part is even if you do dig a hole through it, you can just
cover it right back up.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't think about that. I'll hand it back to John. We have a bunch of questions, but I think we're kind of covering a good deal of them.
Yeah, so let's see. So Eric, you've hit a few of the ones that I had on my list. So I guess one that I have is you've been developing this material. So it looks like you've already extruded some material. Is that stuff that you've done using your own equipment? I mean, is this all being done in-house, or is there someone else who's actually extruding this?
No, we're doing this in-house with homemade equipment. It's all prototype, equipment that we put together with PID controllers and heating elements and worm feeds and stuff like that. And it's that's because this is one of the reasons. This is one of the primary reasons we're going to Kickstarter is to get much higher end equipment, because that stuff can't hold tolerances. This is the manufacturing from the raw materials all the way through to the completed material, even how it has to be wound on the spool. It's incredibly to give a product that's going to work for the end user and not just be like a really frustrating experience for them, that everything has to be perfect, like literally perfect. It has to be absolutely perfect. So we've extruded some.
And we've printed some cool stuff.
Yeah,
I have to say, the wines on the spools that you've shown look pretty exceptional. I mean, we have experience with filament manufacturing. We've seen a lot of this stuff firsthand. We know how difficult it can be to get it to work well. And I mean, the spools you have so far, considering what you've been making it on, seems pretty good.
Well, thank you. And one of the things that I think we identified as being pretty important early on, because when we first got the 3D printer, it came with filament that was just like a snarled mess of PLA. And the stuff is so rugged, it doesn't matter. You can tug on that and it'll unspool eventually, probably without causing an air print. But this isn't like that. Like this, you can just break it. Not that easy. It's got some integrity.
but like you said, spaghetti, it's you can exert some force on it. Yeah.
It'll likely tear.
Right. So we needed to not do that. We need to take care with how we manufacture and initially ship the material, so it just unwinds perfectly. And
Gotcha. So the funds from the Kickstarter sounds like it's going to be used for new equipment. So what happens? I mean, the way things are tracking, it looks like you guys are going to hit your goal, but what happens if that doesn't happen? I mean, we've seen a lot of Kickstarters. Yours looks like a really solid one. You actually have experience manufacturing a product already. It sounds like you're taking an existing formula. It's not like this is all conceptual. So right. I mean, it's very concrete what you're trying to do. But what happens if the Kickstarter doesn't quite make it?
I'm happy to jump in here. First of all, we hope it makes it because we've bootstrapped this business for 5 years, and which, given the state of the economy and the fact that we started a manufacturing business on U.S. soil during a bad economy, it was insane.
That's a great idea. But it's been awesome.
In retrospect, there's other businesses I might have tried starting, but it's been insane, and we don't want to have to do that for this material, because this material, it's like the window is now. Like this is a problem everybody is experiencing, those build lines. And the fact that like, even if you can get rid of the build lines, I know there's a really cool thing out there that like polishes it with isopropyl alcohol. But that just smooths it. You can't like, go in and sculpt it and change it and reposition it. So the time is now, and I really hope that people do understand that, we need the funds in order to do this. If it doesn't fund, it kind of seems like a lot of people get what this thing does, what this material does, but it sort of has been our experience that big companies, big studios that do a lot of like really big sculptures, they get it, they instantly get it. So partnering with a bunch of different sort of larger studios is complicated, and it's sort of a logistical nightmare.
Each studio has kind of its own personality and how they do things and how they want.
Well, even
some
how,
sort of
how to write contracts like that set us. We would prefer not to have to do that. We would prefer to have it crowdfunded and have everybody get something that they're really happy with, and we get to manufacture this material and keep. This isn't the only thing we've got in the pipeline. We have some sort of cool ideas, maybe 2 years out. And this is sort of the first step. So we want to keep bringing cool things to people. And this is going to be like a huge springboard for us if we can crowdfund this, really get it going, get it out there in a big way, have everybody love it, because everybody who's tried it has loved it so far. Yeah. And so I think it's going to be a huge hit. But I think people have been, maybe we haven't done the best job getting out the message of exactly like what this stuff, like how it's going to change your life, like how this is going to save you time. The fact that I've got these, we love cats here. So this is why this is free.
That might be my fault.
You figured out the internet formula then.
Yeah, right. That's right. So the fact that you can take, and you can kind of see that. Can you see that? That you can take that and turn it into this.
Yeah, it won't focus on.
It won't focus on that.
Yeah, I know we have pictures on your. We'll steal some stuff from your Kickstarter page.
Yeah. So like you can do so much with this, and then and just mold it and cast it in a hard plastic. And I think a lot of people aren't getting it. They're like, oh, isn't this just, what's that material?
We need another card.
Oh shoot, I have to change the card.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Hang on a second, guys.
Do you mind?
We'll do that.
I think we're still fine. So
I think a lot of people think that this is there's a material. It's you warm it up. It's a plastic.
Oh, it's kind of it's like the MakerBot had it. It's their version of flexible filament, where it's a low temperature material where you can shape it, but you can't sculpt it. So you can sort of.
Yeah, I had it when I was a kid, and I tried making some dinosaur teeth out of it, and it was really hard to work with. It's cool in concept, and I think it might find a place in my workflow for really quick mother molds. For a shell, like if I'm doing a brush up mold, I might take that stuff and like make a really quick mother mold. I'm not saying it's not a good material. It's just not. It's not what this is. And a lot of people think that this is probably just that.
So are you guys good on the memory card side of things now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I guess one of my last questions. So when I look at the Kickstarter, you have a target ship date of May 2017. So when this Kickstarter succeeds, what are the next steps? What's between now and May?
Ooh, that's a lot of basically production tweaking. So we have to shift our production focus from just producing a sculpting material to doing the full filament production in a way that's scalable. So it needs to be a smooth manufacturing operation. That's really what the focus is going to be on. And then testing with a bunch of different printers. We've only gotten to print in a few printers because we don't have access to every printer that's out there, and the material needs to be testable in multiple different systems. Like I really want to try it in a Beane extruder. I don't have one. So a lot of this is also going to be going towards fine tuning it so that it really is working well for most consumer printers. I really want to try it on the M3D, and then there's there's so many cool things out there. There's the simple. So we got to test a lot of stuff and make sure that we've got all the right specifications and recommendations for multiple different consumer printers.
Right, and we want to be able to at some point, just like during the course, between now and May, because we've heard from a lot of people, wow, this stuff is so cool. Now I've finally got a reason to buy a 3D printer. Which one do you guys recommend? And we're like, I don't really know, because we've only tested on a few things. We've got Brook Drum is going to be helping us, figure out his printer, it'll work in the printer bot.
And that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then we welcome any other printer companies out there that want us to see if it'll work in their printer, and maybe we could recommend their printer. Just get in touch with us.
We gotta try all the things.
Yeah,
so
we want to try it in everything.
A few months of refining production and really testing out.
And also tweaking the formula. I mean, that it's not set in stone. We have something that works really well. That's not to say that it can't be improved just a little bit. So, I'm such a perfectionist. Everything I do, you look at my sculptures, the material that we manufacture, the graphic design that we did, every step of the way, we try to make everything perfect. So I'm going to keep working on the formula to make sure that it's works in every situation.
Gotcha. So if there are people that are on the edge right now of backing this campaign, what do you think is holding them back? And with that in mind, what would you tell them? What would you say to alleviate what those concerns might be?
So I'm going to take the first part, and if you want to take the second. So I think there's two things. One, I think that people have been trained to want something really, really cheap. And Amazon and companies like that, they can buy in huge bulk, and they can afford to take losses and whatnot, so they can make things look cheap. Even and other Kickstarters, a lot of them we've discovered are sort of backed by corporations already by the time they even go to Kickstarter. So things cost money, and a really unique material, R&D, creating an actual product that people can buy as much as they want, whenever they want throughout the year, and that it's consistent and it's never on back order. That's a huge undertaking. I don't think people really quite grasp that. The second part is shipping.
Oh yeah, shipping. I think that's the thing we've heard the most. And
really, I guess I wouldn't have thought about that. But I mean, Can you expand on that a little bit more?
The shipping part?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just mostly that the cost of, especially international shipping, we didn't want to limit the Kickstarter just to the US, because we have lots of international customers, and we know people really dig this stuff all over the place. But the cost of shipping internationally is actually really high. Really high. To raise the money for this so that we actually have the money to work with, we need to also charge for shipping, because it's going to be it'll be close to 13,000 is what our estimate was. If our numbers work out. If we hit our goal, we'll spend almost 13,000 of that simply shipping rewards. And I think that's where a lot of Kickstarters, especially ones that are run by smaller startups, not with huge investment already, can sometimes run into a lot of issues. You see a lot of these things that end up with just overwhelming shipping costs that then the creators don't know how to handle when it actually happens.
I already went through this.
We have some experience with this.
I ran a Kickstarter once, and
so we're trying to be honest about what it costs.
Yeah, I ran a Kickstarter to make a video on how I sculpt in Cx5, and I asked for $10,000. It funded to $19,000. I was so naive. I didn't realize it's about a $50,000 undertaking to put together a good video. So
we spent $7,000 on shipping.
$7,000 of, so Kickstarter, I raised 19. They took 2, so I got 17. 7 of that went to shipping, just to shipping. $10,000 went to the video production, which wound up being a $50,000 production job. Right. So
I think what we're hoping for with backers, and this is an odd balance, getting them a product that's really cool, that comes out on time when we say, well, that's completely ready to use, that isn't like an experimental product. It's not a first run, it will be the final iteration.
Yeah.
But also making sure that we do get the capital up front to do it is the balance. And we've tried to be honest about that, but I think that is one of the things, like, people are saying, hey, how come this isn't less expensive, and why don't I have free shipping? And we can't. We're not big enough to absorb the cost of $13,000 of shipping in a few months. That's a lot of money. So
And
we
we're
hope
not-
that people
yeah.
get that and want to support what we're doing as a whole, more so than just as a pre-order service, because we could have done that, but we thought it would be better to actually involve the community, get the feedback, hear from people who are experienced with the 3D printers that they already use. We could have just set it up as a pre-order on our site, but the community aspect of Kickstarter can actually be really neat and can support the creation of something totally new like this. So,
And I think
hopefully it works.
the last thing I'd say is what was really important to us is that people have a good experience with the material. And we know now, from having done a number of trade shows, people come up to us and they're like, I bought the material and I don't know how to work. It's really frustrating. And like in 2 minutes, I can show them how to do it hands-on, and they're like, oh, all right, now I get it. It's such a weird learning curve. When you get it, it's like, oh, all right, this is totally easy. So one of the things that we wanted, that we thought was super important to include in everybody's reward is an experience kit, and it's like a piece of the material in like with the lines on it, and you can experience sculpting it.
And we can do videos and interact and show people like how to get into this stuff, because it is so different than a plastic. No one's seen anything that's editable like this yet. So when we put it in people's hands and people start working on it, they go, oh my God, because that's the reaction of seeing what's really different about it.
And then they go and print something. That was our idea.
But who knows?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, I just want the filament. I don't want.
Yeah, and if you just want the filament, you might, in our mind, might be setting yourself up for like a little bit of a frustrating experience. So that's one of the things that we feel like also might have been, difficult for people.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that, Eric, do you have any more questions?
I don't think so. I'm going to try to do the send-off, though. Okay. So, Adam, Beane, Alexis, Ettner. And then, do you guys have any trade shows coming up, or just want to plug your social media stuff and your Kickstarter?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as far as Kickstarter, you can find it under Cx5, or it's bit.ly/Cx5 Kickstarter. That'll get you there.
Any trade shows coming up? Where I found out about you guys because of Make covered you guys, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, we'll be doing the next Monsterpalooza, which is going to be, I believe, in April.
Yeah.
So we'll be at that for sure, and then hopefully Maker Faire as well up in the Bay Area.
Oh, that froze.
Yep, something. Yeah, we went a little longer than we expected, but really enjoyed the interview, and really hope that you do well with your Kickstarter. About right now, 9 days left.
Yep.
Hopefully, we'll get this up tomorrow, maybe even tonight, if I'm that quick. But yeah, I can't think of anything else to say. But John, Eric, Alexis, and Adam, thank you very much. And we have more interviews coming soon. See you later from Fargo 3D Printing.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like it froze up. It looks like it froze up now. Perfect timing.
Yeah, weird end result there. I don't know. That was on my end.
It's, I think Eric, everything's good. I hope so.
Okay. All right.
Oh, we should do that on our end too, actually.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, because we're doing. There we go. That was a loud one.